right, well, welcome to Quixotic Heights, where dreams take flight and where we explore the stories, ideas, and leaders transforming the future of care. Today's guest is Darlene Cunha, a nurse executive change coach and Caritas leader whose work is reshaping how we show up for the people who challenge us most. With decades of bedside leadership and coaching experience, Darlene advocates for a new model of care, one where compassion and clinical demands don't compete, but instead they coexist to elevate patient outcomes and staff well-being. In this conversation, we will explore how to navigate difficult patient interactions, support overwhelmed care teams, and build organizational cultures rooted in humanity. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a leader, or someone who wants to understand what compassionate care really looks like, this episode will stay with you. So let's dive in. Darlene, how are you?
I'm so honored to be here. I'm well, I'm excited. I wake up every day and it's a new day and it's joyous. And so if we can, wake up every day with a smile and be grateful for another day, that's me.
Yay. Well, I'm so excited to have you on. I know that we've been kind of living in the LinkedIn world together through Tom Dahlberg's connection. And so today's episode is really special for me because I get to know you a little bit more and learn about your work and get insight into how we can provide compassionate care to patients. So with that, let's just start with, for our listeners who don't know much about your work, myself included, how do you define what a nurse executive change coach is and a Caritas leader is?
Yeah, so a nurse executive change coach usually is a seasoned or experienced nurse that has held an executive position. Myself, I've been a chief nursing officer and chief operating officer over healthcare systems. And so I've navigated the world of healthcare from the bedside to the C-suite. And then as a change coach, it is when you can use your years of experience and tenure in relationship building to bring about change that might be difficult for our bedside colleagues to fully embrace or understand. And how do we get them to do that? How do we show them that this is the new way of delivering patient care with technology, but not losing the Caritas, the compassion and love and care that we deliver at the bedside, but integrating it together to support the ever-changing needs of our patient population today.
Wow. So how did you even get to today? Like, tell me a little bit about your journey, your story.
Yeah, so like I said, I spent the first part of my career as a trauma ICU nurse for almost 20 years, and then was tapped to get into more leadership roles. I didn't really take those leadership roles early because I was raising my family, and it was really important for me to be there for them. But as they grew and became older, I stepped into those leadership positions and found that I could really affect change over larger populations when I was in a position to do so. So I went through the regular climb. I was a supervisor, a manager, a director, and an opportunity came for me to join a company that was looking at acquisitions across the country. So I was in a unique position to actually go into different organizations from California to the East Coast, Midwest to the Northeast. I mean, I stepped into little micro hospitals and big academic medical centers. And if there's one thing that I saw consistently, was how we treated people, how we treated patients, how we treated each other. Some cultures, you could feel it when you walked in. Other cultures, you could feel it when you walked in.
Mhm.
Cold and sterile to warm and loving. And so I just had this inquisitive mind to say, why? Why are we not loving and caring and compassionate always? What are some of those driving factors in the different organizations? So I took additional leadership positions where I was chief nursing officer and chief operating officer over a healthcare system. And what I loved about it is that I had my finger on the pulse. I could see what was driving operations and what the challenges were to the staff, and really understanding how it affected the work that they did. Because that culture either drives good clinical outcomes and retention, or it doesn't. And so for me, it became a mission. I became a Caritas coach through the Watson Caring Science Institute that I proudly wear my pin, which really is a reminder every day of why we do this important work. And so I've been spreading that joy and love, because it's not just for nursing, it's for all caregivers. It's for everyone who touches the patient, whether you're licensed or not. We all are part of that healing environment. And so for me, it's not about title, it's about presence.
Yeah, yeah. And it's easier said than done because we're all
Mhm.
human and our patients, your patients are human and they go through their journey as well, their ups and downs. So
Yeah.
how do you address or prevent burnout?
So, I look at burnout as a responsibility of not only leadership, but each and every person at the bedside, because we all have an opportunity to become part of the change. And so, as a nurse leader, I set up councils, I set up huddles. What's driving your anxiety? What's driving the stress? What's driving those silos and barriers? Is it physical resources? Is it equipment? Is it culture? Is it leadership that's not present to really address, challenges that pop up all day and every day?
Mhm.
And it's psychological safety. When nurses and teams do not feel safe to say what's really driving um, unhappiness, burnout, you know, um, uh, call outs, not showing up, we do a disservice not only to our colleagues, but to those that they care for. And so burnout, we saw a lot of it during COVID, right? During the pandemic. But that really just shed a light on something that was already brewing, that we've had a huge gap in nursing vacancies across this country. It's predicted that it'll be more than 1 million nurses short in 2026, and more than 3 million within healthcare. So if you just think about that burden, and you show up to work every day knowing that resources are challenged, how do we help our teams? And I can tell you, it's not about more money. People just want to work in an environment and a culture that supports and loves them. So what are we doing to provide that for our colleagues? Do we have rooms where they can go and decompress? We've talked about Schwartz rounds. Those have been around for a long time. They originated out of the Kenneth Schwartz Center here in Boston, Massachusetts. And it's really just compassionate rounds, right?
Mhm.
How do we support one another? How do we give back to our colleagues? It's not just about taking care of patients. If we're not taking care of each other and providing those resources, we lose an opportunity to really get in front of burnout.
Yeah. So you mentioned there's a shortage of nurses, and
Mhm.
I particularly know of a young gal who just entered the nursing program. But I'm kind of curious to know if you can give us a little bit of insight in terms of, the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of entering this field, so that they're entering it with eyes wide open and knowing what to expect and what to look forward to, so that they can have that 360 view and continue to move forward with the profession and not give up.
I love that. So one of the things I'm doing right now with Trinity Health is I'm working with their talent acquisition and HR folks. How are we interviewing? How are we recruiting new nurses? Are we being completely transparent about the role and the job and the challenges within whatever field they want? Because you can be a med-surg nurse, a critical care nurse, an OR nurse. The environments are very different. And so we have to look at that. We have to make sure they understand the workload and the challenges in each specific demographic within the hospital, right? And I can tell you myself, I've interviewed colleagues that were dead set on coming in for a particular department and ended up being hired in a completely different area because the seat they chose was not going to be a good fit. So it's the maturity level of the nurse, of the person coming in, and their expectations, and are we level setting up front to make sure we're recruiting the right candidates and the right staff. Now, I will also tell you, nursing's hard work, but it is the most rewarding work. And so we share those stories. We share the challenges and we share the good, because those stories are the very fabric of this work. And so when we're looking to make sure that we recruit our nurses, we now recruit them and keep them and retain them. We do shadowing now. So before you're even hired, we ask you to come in and shadow for 1, 2, 3, 4 days, whatever is comfortable for you, to actually see what happens on the unit. So you get a feel for the pulse, the culture, the pace. So it's a good fit or not a good fit. We want to make sure that whoever we bring on board wants to be there, and we want to keep you. So aligning expectations correctly, I think, is key.
And what would you say the career ladder for a nurse, entry level nurse looks like?
Beautiful question. And that's one of the questions we ask when we're interviewing. What is your career expectation? Where do you see yourself in 1, 3, 5 years? Do you want to get into leadership? Many people want to do critical care, but you have to do that foundational nursing practice first, right? That medical surgical nursing to get those skills so that you can build upon them for critical care. So when you have a career ladder, that is put into your folder so that we help you get there. You join committees, you join councils where your voice is heard, where you hear others. You're cross-pollinating ideas so you understand what it takes to be a leader, if that's the role and the trajectory that you have for yourself. If you want to get into education, we'll have you work within the education department. We'll set you up so that you can be on a council and see how that feels and where you can contribute so that it's meaningful work. But career ladders are extremely important, not only for personal growth, but for retention, for joy within the practice, for success, to feel like you've made it. You know, that you're continuing to grow. We want that curiosity. So that's what we're trying to do.
That's wonderful. And then, historically, nursing has been more of a female profession, and it's lovely to see more and more doors opening up for a more diverse population. I'm curious to hear from you, what have you seen in terms of the demographics of those entering the program and those retained, those are actually continuing to stay.
So lots of men coming into this profession because they don't see it as being a woman's role. There are so many positions. Some men prefer to be at the bedside. They like that fast pace. Others like the emergency room or critical care, cardiac care, the OR. There's so many positions within nursing that men can feel that they can contribute, where they don't feel marginalized. We have a very diverse work group that I'm working with right now at Trinity Health. Lots of men. I would say that I don't have the exact statistic, but I would say that we have increased our male population within this field by at least 10 or 12% in the last couple of years, especially post-COVID. We've seen a surge. People want to give back. They want to do good. They want to feel compassion again. I personally hired quite a few men as a CNO at Mercy Medical Center before I left that role. And the reason being, we're looking for something, a field that we can grow in. If
Mhm.
you're in construction or you're in plumbing or electrical, the typical male domains, right, for work, there's not really a ladder, a career ladder, but nursing offers that perspective where you can get into leadership in so many domains from inpatient to outpatient physician practice. It just opens so many doors, and that's what's appealing to men.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, you're a seasoned professional, but you weren't always that way. I imagine when you entered, you were pretty green. Can you kind of take us back to that time period? What was it like starting, and what was like the defining or the quixotic moment that kind of got you towards this compassionate Caritas leadership care?
Oh my goodness. So this is back in 1980. I was just a new grad out of nursing school, right? And about a month out. And I used to show up to work really early. I just wanted to be in the hospital. I just loved the whole vibe. And I can remember approaching the nurses' station, and there were a group of nurses in a huddle, and I could hear them saying, I had him yesterday. I'm not taking him today. Nope, it's not my turn. It's not my turn. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? And then as soon as I got close to the nurses' station, they all sort of collectively turned their heads and they said, it's Darlene's turn. And so I was like, my turn for what? And they said, you're going to have Gus today. And so I didn't know who Gus was, but I knew he was the one patient nobody wanted, right?
Mm,
He was labeled difficult. He was dismissed. He was really treated like a burden on the unit. Um, but something inside me just knew that there was more to that story. And he was tough. He was tough. He was a patient that would shout a lot, tell you to shut the door, didn't want to participate in care. And I just knew there was something underneath that what hadn't come out, that there was a story for this because we're not born that way.
yeah,
So what was it? And so I dug deep into my faith to try to use that to help me help Gus. And so that moment sort of became a turning point for me. I didn't say much. I let silence work. I talked and explained what I was going to do. And what I learned up until that point, it was this is what we're doing to you and for you. This is your care plan, and you can't say no. And
mm,
so I thought, well, he can say no. It's his care plan. And
yeah,
maybe that's why he's resisting. Maybe that's why he's not participating. Maybe that's why he's scared, because he's not part of the plan. He's
yeah,
part of your plan. And so I just started talking and asking permission to do things, involving him in his care. And at that moment, there was sort of a shift, and it was a shift in how we care for those patients who challenge us, right?
mm,
I wanted to truly change the way we took care of difficult patients, how they were seen, how they were understood, how they were treated. And Gus really reminded me that every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves love. Every person that pushes us to the brink sometimes of our own patience deserves us to pause, right?
mm,
And so that's the most powerful force in nursing, when you can love someone and care for someone when it's inconvenient. And
yeah,
that was my moment to be bold, to be idealistic at 20, and to really be grounded in Caritas, which was the nursing theory that I had learned in nursing school. And it really shaped me. It shaped me not only as a leader, but to be a true patient advocate.
Mm, that's so beautiful. And so, would you say that there are some common misconceptions that the healthcare industry have with difficult patients?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, it's so hierarchical in hospitals and in systems, right? It's these are the policies, these are the procedures, these are the way we do things. And so there's this systemic bias against difficult patients. We label them before we even get to know them. We see it a lot in emergency rooms, right? Where it's very chaotic and patients come in, they're scared, they may be loud, they may even be rude. But it's up to us to step back and say, they don't know me. They're not angry with me. They're angry with what's happening and the loss of control, the health challenges that they have. And so when I look at Gus being labeled and dismissed, and the culture around him being one of avoidance and not advocacy, right? Challenging that mindset and confronting those deeply ingrained biases and practices is really what I really believe I was put there to do. And so we still have that. We're getting better,
Hmm.
but it still exists today. And when we see it, we have to confront it, right? We can't leave it in isolation.
Yeah. So, based on your approach with Gus, um, how did he respond, first of all? And then, secondly, how did you affect the change in views and care with the staff that was like, okay, Darlene, you get Gus today?
Yeah. So I ended up taking Gus every day, every time I was on. And I will tell you, he was difficult at first. He would kind of push my hand away. Now, this was a man who was in his mid 70s. I can still see him. I can still remember opening the door because he always wanted it shut. I still remember the room, 407. And when you pushed open the door, the pungent smell of iodine just hit you because of the large dressing he had that required a betadine dressing. And so it was just so pungent. And I thought, he's in a dark room. He's scared. He's by himself. There's this strong odor. Wow. If it affects me this way, what is it doing for him, right? Emotionally and physically and mentally. And he was a long gentleman. He had to have been 6'6", and the
Mhm.
beds weren't that long. So his feet were hanging over the foot of the bed. And I thought, he's not even comfortable. I had facilities come up, take the foot of the bed off. And back then you had to screw them off. They didn't lift off. And they put a piece of plywood under the mattress that extended beyond the bed. And we covered it with pillows and blankets. And this is what I saw, Amy. The minute that footrest was taken off, he stretched his legs for the first time and you could just see his face soften.
Mm.
And I got an extra blanket and I covered him up and he tapped my hand as if to say thank you. And
Mhm.
that was sort of the turning point. And each day I would talk. He didn't want his blinds open, and I would turn the blinds a little bit at a time until finally the sun was shining through and he just held his face up to the light. We talked about music. And one day he said he liked country music. I brought in a transistor radio and he was tapping his foot and his hand to the music. Those little things, not much talk, but just those nonverbal cues that I was getting through to this man. And he, in his own way, appreciated what I was doing without actually saying it. And
Mm.
so when I think about Gus and standing up for him and standing up alone at times, it was challenging. It was scary. I was emotionally afraid to do that, to push against the grain with the leadership team and my staff. They didn't really know me, but I was firm that we were going to take care of him in a more loving way. And I started bringing colleagues into the room with me to help with turning and repositioning. When others didn't understand or support or engage initially, they were coming around. They were seeing that they had misjudged and that this man needed to be loved and cared for. He was at the end of his life, and we needed to know what we could do to support him.
Yeah.
And so, when you have to balance all of that, in addition to being new and, fresh out of nursing school, I was like 4 weeks out of nursing school, and I'm working with very seasoned nurses. It was a moment, and I knew that I had arrived.
Yeah. So in the heat of the moment though, when there's a lot of fear or conflict or what have you, what does compassionate care look like um, when so many things are escalated in that moment?
Yeah, so if there's one thing that I've learned um, early on was when we react before we pause, we get exactly what is intended. You get a spark. You get you get an ignition. You get a fire. So for me, even though I wanted to at times, shake my fist and say, "What are you doing?" I just stepped back and paused. And oftentimes, when I was met with resistance, I'd say, "What would you do if that were your loved one?
Mhm.
What would you do um, if you had no one?" And when you turn it around, it helped it helped me to build a coalition, one nurse at a time. Another nurse came into the circle, and before you knew it, we had a team of nurses who were on board with changing the way we cared for difficult patients. And it was hard. There were days I cried. I went home and I cried, and I thought, I can't do this, and then my mom would look at me and say, "Yes, you can, and you need to go back, and you need to make sure that everyone hears your story. Everybody hears what you're doing." It's not easy
Mhm.
balancing compassion with clinical demands, a staff that doesn't always support what you're doing, and I had to navigate that tension. Um, but I came out of it, uh, I think, a bolder, brighter, more compassionate nurse than when I went in.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the nursing program. I mean, things have changed since you were initially in there to now, but kind of give us an idea of what it was like for you going through the program, and then versus today, like how has that changed? And I'm always thinking like, okay, if you're going in the medical field, you're gonna have to work with cadavers, and you're gonna have to like learn how to, lift a man twice your age and position him or whatever. So, yeah, could you share a little bit of your story there?
Oh my goodness. So I went to a faith-based school, um, nursing school, and so there was prayer every day. We prayed before our assignment, and we were taught that we worked as a team. It was team nursing when I first got out of nursing school, and then of course we went into primary. Now we're going back to team nursing and new models of care, but it really was about working as a team. Um, that when we collectively come together, not only do we share our strengths, mentally, physically, and educationally, and I didn't just have traditional students in my class, believe it or not. I had people that were in my class that were on their second career, that always wanted to be a nurse and went back to school in their 50s and 60s. So we navigated that, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I had generational experiences back in 1978, 79, and 80 that we see today on the floor. But I think the challenges today are twofold. One, yes, it's multi-generational, but two, we also have the use of technology. We didn't have electronic health records back then. We didn't have little phones where you could do secure chats and get in touch with a physician right away. Documentation was all manual. but it taught you discipline, it taught you time management, how to be efficient, and how to rely on each other as a team.
Mm.
Today, when you look at how we navigate uh, new nurses coming into the field, we have nurse residency programs. We didn't have nurse residency programs back in the late 70s and early 80s. And these nurse residency programs help to prepare these nurses so when they're working independently, they have the support, the mentorship, and the grounding that they need to be successful out of school. Years ago, we were paired up with a mentor, and we worked in an assignment with them. But today, we get more foundational practice with those nurse residency programs. And I think that gives us a strong foothold in actually developing and sustaining those clinical skills, and also teaching them to have a voice, to speak up, to tell
Mhm.
me what's working, what's not working. What is your opinion? How could we do this differently? And I think today those nurses that enter into those organizations that have those programs really have a great foundation to be successful and to be retained.
Yeah, I love that. So, in terms of success and just succession in general, how do you how do you mentor the next person coming in to fulfill your role? And also, how were you mentored by your predecessor as you are in this role now?
Okay, so I'll share the latter first. So I was blessed to have some tremendous mentors. When you don't have a good one, and I had one of those, and I decided very early on in my career, I did not want that to be the lens from which I practiced. And so I quickly moved from that particular department into another one. And that's when to give you a little bit more insight, back in 1980, when I started on a medical surgical unit. And the nurse manager was very militant, and there was no voice at the table. We would have a staff meeting. We weren't able to share opinions. It was sort of, my way or the highway. And I thought, oh my gosh, how do we grow as a team? And I'm a really good reader of the room. And so when you are sitting at a table and everyone's looking down and no one's making eye contact and are really sharing, I thought, oh, this is not for me.
Mm.
I can't. First of all, I love to talk and I love to share. So that wasn't going to be a good place for me. And so I reached out to a manager who had an opening in the ICU. And back then, they wanted you to have at least a year of med surgical experience before you went into a critical care area. And I interviewed and I said, I promise I won't let you down. And about 2 days later, she hired me and I transitioned into the ICU where I stayed for 20 years. So
Mm.
that tells you what sort of environment. It was a healthy exchange, education. We didn't have computers back then. So we had
Mhm.
a librarian that would literally pull articles that my manager and director would say, we are seeing an influx of patients who have this. Can you pull some literature on it? And then we would sit in a huddle together and we would talk about that article. We all had to read it. We all had to share. And then we developed care plans based
Mm.
on that literature. That's growth. That's teaching your team how to think,
Mhm.
how to look beyond the walls to find other solutions and to constantly grow. We were given positions of leadership, even if they were small. I want you to be charged this week. You can be charged next week. You're going to be charged the week after. So we took turns on assignments. And stepping in and being put on committees and councils. So we learned how the organization ran outside of our unit What impacted those decisions, not only clinically, but financially? Because we all know no mission, no margin, no mission, right? You have to be fiscally prudent and responsible. So we learned that. So I learned early on, mentor, teach, pull people into the fold. Don't be so full of yourself. My leaders didn't demand titles. It was about the patient. It was about each other. We took care of each other. We were a real family of caregivers that not only cared for our patients well, we cared for each other well. So now I'll move into the second half of your question. Um, because I had great leaders who, when they saw potential, gave me opportunities to rise, even if it meant that left a void or a vacancy in a position that was really important to them. And so I started doing the same. I wanted to cascade that. Um, if I saw someone doing really well that was the next chief nursing officer, I would mention their name in rooms where they weren't. I wanted people to know who they were. I wanted to put them in front of other leaders so they could shine. 40 under 40, right? There's that organization, or 30 under 30. I would submit names of colleagues so that they were recognized in the community as much as they were within the organization. It's so important. When you become a servant leader, it's not about you. It's about those you serve and those you care for.
That's beautiful. How do you think how do you think it's best to work with nurses? If you are a doctor, if you are, any position, if you're a patient, like what is the best way to work with your nurse and leverage, his or her experience and expertise?
It's all about collaboration, but it's hard for a physician to work with a nurse if he doesn't know her. It's about trust, right? So if I'm going to work with you, I have to trust that what I'm sharing with you is equally as important, and that I'm going to get the best of the best to collaborate with me. So you have to set up opportunities for physicians to actually be with nurses. So if there's a council or an opportunity, I'll give you a really recent example. So our medical executive committee would meet, and I wanted an agenda item, even though I was nursing and represented the nursing population. I asked my chief medical officer, because we were connected at the hip, right? That dyad relationship, if I could have 30 minutes on one of his meetings once a month to present a project that we were working on and to share with them the education, the knowledge, the data that was driving clinical outcomes, good or bad, right? And that we wanted to partner with them. And who could we partner with? Who would be someone that would sit with our team? So sharing what we were doing, that it wasn't just about the care at the moment for this patient for these 8, 10, or 12 hours. We were looking at the whole paradigm of nursing and clinical practice. And how do we come together as a clinical team, right? That you have to be able to approach us and have that conversation. But in order to approach us, there has to be some familiarity. There has to be some sense of collegiality and collaboration. Get yourself in front of them. Find ways to partner, even if it's outside, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's outside the organization. And once we started doing that, we truly became patient-centric. We were on the same page. It wasn't nursing and physicians, it was a care team.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Have you done one of those Myers-Briggs,
Oh, of course.
personality
Who
tests?
hasn't? Who hasn't, right?
And I ask that because, you're more vocal, you love to, share stories and, you're asking for 30 minutes on the agenda, whatever. But there's a lot of people who aren't as vocal or extroverted. They're more maybe the quiet, unsung hero who are there doing the best that they can, but they don't speak up necessarily. How do you mentor someone like that, or recognize someone like that, or help them to grow a little bit further to be able to speak up and have a voice?
So I have an introverted son. He'll tell you he's not, but he is. And so one of the things that I love to do is I don't want to put anyone on the spot to speak and make them uncomfortable, but I start to sort of plant the seed. So let's say it's you, Amy, and you've done some terrific work on a particular care plan or a particular policy and procedure that is really important to care delivery. I might say initially in a group of people, Amy has done tremendous work on this. Her insight, her skill, her knowledge, her compassion for this work is bar none what has moved us this far. If you don't know Amy already, please reach out to her. She would love to talk to you. Now I'm making it so it's easy for you to control how many people you speak to quietly, one-on-one. The next time I meet, I'll say, Amy, I'd love to have you share this with me. I want us to present this together. And we would have practiced until you're comfortable, because the one thing I find difficult is to sit back and watch the true hero
Mm-hmm.
of whatever it is that they've been working on not get the credit. And it's so easy for others to not know who really has done the work, if their voice hasn't been brought forward, right? And then it's easy for others to stand in that spotlight. So I try my darndest to make sure I mention their names, make sure I point them out in a meeting, stand, you don't have to speak, and then slowly get them to take some spotlight that they're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with.
Yeah,
Because there's so many of us that do that great work.
yeah. Do you think compassionate care is teachable? What if there's a nurse or a doctor, physician that who's just grumpy all the time, or at least appears to be, and just is so difficult to work with?
So, do I think compassionate care is teachable? Absolutely. Think of it this way. Do we teach children how to be kind? Do we teach them how to be compassionate, how to be a good friend? We call it out. We say, Johnny, that you were such a good friend. Oh, thank you for giving him a hug. He really needed a hug today. But when we get to a certain age, we stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we say, hey, Amy, great job taking care of that patient. I know how hard that was for you. Come here, give me a hug, right? Or I'm here for you if you need to just take a break. I'll cover your patients, right? We have got to, first of all, share our stories more. We take them home, we cry, but we don't share them more. We have to huddle every day. Tell me three good things. Tell me something good between you and a colleague, something good between you and a patient, and something good going on at home, right? Tell me three good things. It sets the tone, right? That we're all here doing this difficult work together. Compassion is absolutely teachable, and I'll tell you a very very quick story. I had a physician taking care of my husband who was very robotic, and my husband was going through cancer treatment, and he had zero personality. And I thought, oh, no, 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 we can't do this. See, you have to be kind and good. You have to be compassionate and smart. And so there's no dichotomy, right? And it doesn't take much to be kind. And you don't have to hug somebody. You don't have to kiss them, right? But if we can love our pets, we can love our patients. We can
Mm-hmm.
love each other. And so compassion is absolutely teachable, and it's how you model it, right? Everybody models it a little bit differently. That when leaders walk down the hall and they make you feel important, and they can do that just through a glance, just through a smile, just by giving you a compliment. Compassionate care, absolutely, and we deserve it. We
Yeah.
deserve it.
Can you share a little bit about boundaries in terms of, like I look at teachers who are so good at what they do and they're up against a lot that it's kind of like doing their job with one hand tied behind their back. And sometimes, a kid needs a hug or anything, some kind of affection or words of affirmation, whatever. But I also feel like sometimes they can't do that, right? Because there's some, um, you know, yeah, you know where I'm going with that. So,
I don't know. I think we put those boundaries up ourselves. I
yeah.
think we put them up. I don't want to be, labeled. I don't want someone to say I did something and I didn't do it or what have you. I think we've done that to ourselves. I mean, I've been hugging my patients since day one. I've kissed some of my patients. I've hugged my colleagues. I've cried with patients and my colleagues. I've cried with physicians when we've had a difficult case, right? Um, Teachers, I have a teacher in my family. Thank gosh, and it's a man, right? It's my son-in-law, and I will tell you, he says I don't have any problem getting down on one knee to look that child in the eye and say, "Give me a hug." Right? You need a hug right now. And within minutes, he said, that's all they needed. Because their emotions are all over the place, right? They're little. They're trying to figure out how to navigate school and class and all these children. And sometimes it's just overwhelming and they just need someone to settle them down. Sometimes they just need a quiet spot by
Mhm.
themselves, right? So boundaries, I think you read the room. And when I say that, if you have a patient like my Gus, who wasn't very warm and fuzzy, right? But became warm and fuzzy. Um, and I think you read the patient, and sometimes all it takes is you can even hold their hand, right? And send that love just from holding someone's hand. Taking a set of vital signs is another way of connecting with that patient. I always say, your pulse, my pulse, we're connected, right?
Mhm.
So I think we have to decide whether or not we're going to do compassionate work with love and heart. And sometimes those boundaries are a hug.
Yeah, yeah. It just feels like in today's world, everybody's ready to sue everybody for every little thing.
Oh, it's
And
litigious.
right, and there's so much fear and fear in showing emotions and
Yeah.
human touch and kindness
Yeah.
because of the fear of the repercussions. So I mean, that's great that humanity is still with us. Um, we,
Well, I'll tell Amy, I'll just jump in here. If we reduce people to objects, you
mhm,
would do to an object what you wouldn't do to a person, right?
right.
So if we don't maintain our humanity, we
Mhm,
become objects.
yeah.
And so I say that all the time to my team. If you're going to be transactional, you could be stocking shelves in the market, right? You drop a canned good, it's no big deal. You drop a patient on the floor, it's a big deal, right? So we can't do to each other what we would do to an object. We're more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the fun things that embrace your day in terms of technology or people or just, just little simple things like having a parking spot or traffic or whatever. What brings you joy?
um, Connecting with people,
Mhm.
finding, first of all, I really express gratitude every day that I get up, and that sets the tone for my day. But a good cup of coffee in the morning doesn't hurt, all right? And a couple during the day. But truly, what brings me joy is connecting with people. It's meeting new people like yourself, meeting people on LinkedIn that I had two connections this morning with complete strangers, and now we're friends.
Mhm.
I have these little postcards, and it says, maybe this one moment with this one person is the very reason we're here on earth at this time. And it's a Gene Watson quote. And on the back of the card, I actually have one made out. I actually write something beautiful that I saw about that person.
Mhm.
and I give them the card with my writing on it and a blank one because they have to pay it forward to
Mm.
someone else. And so for me, it's, you know, a walk with my neighbor and her dog, connecting. I am definitely a connector. I really want to make sure that I leave this world a little better than I found it. And that if I can touch anyone in healthcare and help them to be kind and compassionate and to look through a different lens, then my day is great, you know?
Yeah. So what would you be doing if you weren't in the nursing and leadership field?
I had that question posed to me by one of the new colleagues that I just met. They said, I haven't seen anybody with this much, just this much enthusiasm for Caritas and compassion. And I said, I'm going to share a story with you, and then you'll understand where I'm coming from. So when I was 4 years old, I was walking up a hill in Boston, Massachusetts with my family going to church. There were seven of us. So you can imagine seven children, two adults walking up the hill. And we finished church and we would cross the street and walk back down. Well, there was a hospital there. And next to the hospital was a school of nursing, because back then a lot of hospitals had schools of nursing because you could do training right there. And so
Mhm.
there was a huge statue, and I remember I'm 4 years old, right? And I said to my father, I said, Daddy, why does she have her hands like this? And he said, he got down on one knee, didn't even realize he was practicing Caritas, right? Got down
Mhm.
on one knee and he said to me, sweetheart, because she holds every patient that they care for right in the palm of her hands. She shows them love. I never forgot that. And
Yeah.
so we would go to church and I'd walk by the statue with my hands like this, 4 years old. Fast forward, my dad got sick and was cared for there, and they held him in the palm of his hands. And I ended up going to school there. That was the faith-based school that I went to. And I believe it was a calling. So if I wasn't a nurse, I absolutely would have done something in the caring industry. Um, I don't, I can't imagine me doing anything else. I have hobbies, but my hobbies always swing back into something compassionate. So that's
Mhm.
the underlying thread and tapestry of what I do.
Yeah. So what are some of your hobbies?
Photography. I love
Okay.
to take pictures. Again, pictures of family when we get together and we're sharing love and compassion. I love to do interior design. I put together rooms and palettes, and but
Mm.
it brings joy to those that go into that space. So again, it's bringing people together, and so for me, it all comes back to Caritas, which is
Yeah.
compassion and love and kindness and
Yeah.
joy.
I'm always envious people who have that lens, that artistic lens where they can see certain palettes, and they can wave their hand basically and put together a room or even a wardrobe or whatever. So that's amazing. I'll just stick to the writing and not the design stuff. But with regards to writing, though, I know that you and I are a part of something very special with Thomas Dahlberg. Would you care to share a little bit more about what this project is and why is it so meaningful?
Tom's project.
Yes.
Yeah, well, from heart to head and back again, right? A journey through the healthcare system. It really touched me deeply because he spoke of those vulnerable moments during his journey of illness and during his journey of wellness. And so it touched me deeply because there are peaks and valleys in our lives, and it's who touches you along the way that
Mhm.
gets you to that state of wellness, or at least that state of peace, right? That state of sort of unity. And so his book was very special because it spoke to the work that I'm doing. It really is an anchor in Caritas. And so to be asked to write an afterword for that book was such a privilege because it allowed me to sort of express my love and joy for this work, and the beautiful art of human caring, and to recognize his journey in such a compassionate and loving way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we look forward to that book, and I look forward to reading your piece. So what's in the future for you? What's ahead, and what do you see for the future of healthcare?
So I think this is the best time to get into healthcare. People say, "Oh, I want to leave." I'm like, "No, you got to jump in, right? Because when it's easy, it's not fun, right?" So I want people to bring energy and joy and love and to dive in and look at, I tell people, use your own personal experience. Even if it's not in a hospital, how about a
Mhm.
loved one, a friend, a colleague that has entered into the healthcare space when they were ill? What went well and what didn't go well? And how can you shed some of your experience and your care and compassion in shaping, that this industry as we move forward, especially with AI and technology, making certain that it doesn't replace the compassionate care we need to give, but is a complement to it, right? We're doing a model of care right now with Trinity Health called Together Team, and it's a virtually connected care model, but we never substitute the bedside team. It's a complement to them. And
Mhm.
so for me, if I can help shape that and make certain that we keep the thread of humanity in this work and identify those opportunities where there's gaps and bring teams together, the frontline teams who are doing this work, to lend their voice and their expertise to keep us glued together as a team.
Yeah.
That's my goal. That's my job. That's what I love doing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you see AI being used, right now? Like what value, or how are you using it as a tool?
So AI can consume so much information and give you quick results back, right? Where you would have spent hours analyzing data, as long as you give it the right prompt, it can give you and output data so quickly to let you know exactly where you have opportunity, so you know where to focus. For me, we use AI now, looking at that data, trending health
Hmm.
stats in the communities that we serve. Where is there opportunity in our communities? Do we have a problem with heart disease or diabetes? Should we have more programs in the community to support wellness instead of illness, right? Looking at that consumable data that we have through health records to help us look at disparities in care in the patients that we're caring for. Where do we need resources in these rural communities? Where is there opportunity within our organization? I can tell you, the organization I started in when I first practiced, and when I left 20 years later, the demographic changed. The people in the area changed. People move in, people move out. Think about neighborhoods. You start neighborhoods when you're young, raising families, and then as you age, many of us move out, new families move in. It's not the same. So AI can help look at all of that data and consume large amounts of it to help
Hmm.
you really focus where you need to apply resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Well, as we're wrapping up on our time together, could you share with us, where we can find you to follow more of your work, and then also if there's any topics that we didn't cover that you would like to spotlight?
So you can find me on LinkedIn under Darlene Cunha, Cunha. I write a lot about where we are in healthcare today, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how we can really weave Caritas into our work, which is just love in action. That's all Caritas means, is love in action. That's all it is. It's not a program. It's a way of being. I do want to start to write down some of my journey through my 4+ decades, and how it might help others navigating a very complex healthcare system today. That's one of my goals, is to start to write that down and who knows, turn it into a book. I've been told I should be doing that, and I haven't done it yet. So I might start that journey.
Mhm.
Um, but I really, care very deeply about this work, and integrating it into leadership development and system redesign. And anytime I can move beyond transactional models of care and really create cultures of love and compassion and dignity and human connection into daily practices, that's my goal.
Yeah, I love it. And you have so much more to give and so much more to serve. But I'm also kind of wanting to look forward a little bit with you and ask you, what does retirement look like for you? And as you get older, what does care look like? Your perfect idea of care for you look like?
So retirement for me, it's kind of hard for me to think about that right now, but I think I would go back to maybe doing more parish nursing. I did that early on in my career. I volunteered. There are so many people that need care at home that don't have resources. And if we could, a community of love is a community of love. And it just kind of spreads. So for me, if that's my mission, if I can give back when I retire, I actually get the biggest joy out of it. So that would feed my soul. And I think for me, my vision for healthcare is to have a loving, caring, compassionate experience when you're ill. And it doesn't mean that you're going to not always have the results or the outcomes that you want, but it is about being treated with kindness and with dignity. And I think we need to get away from transactions and look at this person in front of us. Some people need a little extra time and to
Mhm.
spend that extra moment or two because you don't know what they're going through,
Yeah,
right? Emotionally, physically, you just see the illness, you don't see the person. So I want to get to that kind of a culture.
yeah. Well, I can see very clearly that you're a great caregiver. I'm wondering, do you think you'd be a good patient?
Um, I will tell you that I've been a patient. And what I've done is taken those opportunities to teach and train and to show the nurse at the bedside opportunities. It's all in how you do it.
Mhm.
It's the approach. It doesn't serve either party well when it isn't done in a loving, caring way. And so, because I have extensive knowledge in healthcare and in nursing, and I've taught at the graduate and undergraduate level, I understand sometimes there's gaps in those levels of experience. And it's the kind, compassionate patient and teacher that actually wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Darlene, do you have my last question for you? Is there any question that you wish people would ask you but don't?
Do I have any regrets? Right. So regrets in uh, I guess my career. I don't have regrets. I guess I wish I had started my leadership journey a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
It came, I didn't jump on that um, trajectory until 20 years in. But I think that would be the one thing I wish I'd started a little bit earlier. But better late than never, right?
Yeah. Better late than never. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Darlene, for spending the hour with me. And I can't wait for this episode to air because I think there's going to be so much value for our listeners just to hear your story and what you want to change, for our healthcare system and
Yeah.
country. Thank you for
I
that.
so appreciate the opportunity.
And
Thank
we
you.
will together. We will, as Thomas always says, together. Um,
Together.
Together we will. Yes,
Yes.
he said it perfectly with his accent too.
I know his Boston accent is a bit
Yeah,
heavy,
I love it.
but he's a love.
Yes, he is.
Thank
And
you.
so are you, Darlene. Thank you.
Oh,
Listeners, thank you for joining us today for this meaningful conversation with Darlene Cunha. And her work reminds us that compassion isn't just a luxury for healthcare, it's a clinical necessity and a leadership competency and a pathway to healing for both patients and providers. So if today's episode resonated with you, please consider subscribing, sharing, leaving a review to help others discover these important stories. And to learn more about Darlene, please check her out on LinkedIn and let's help her further her mission to transform patient care. So check out the links in the show notes. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep doing the work that makes a difference. Thank you so much again, Darlene, for joining us today.
thank you so much, Amy. I wish everyone and all our viewers the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.